And now what I want you to do, as soon as we start rolling, what I'm going to get, what do you mean we're rolling now? We're rolling now? The bloody hell. Hello, my friends, hello. Sorry about that. How are you today? Now, a lot of you know me, you've seen me around. My name is none other than CMOT Dibbler, and I'm here to offer you a fantastic deal on the simply most amazing set of books from the preeminent author. You know him, man with a cane, gentleman. He's got a lot of books out there, about 40 of them right now, and you can own them all, every single one of them. And now I know what you're saying. How much is that going to cost? Well, that's the thing. That's the deal I'm here to bring you. Practically cut my own throat to bring it. Now listen up. For just 10 easy payments of $49.99, the entire collection can be yours. Now, you're thinking, wait a minute, CMOT, Mr. Dibbler, sir, what happens if he writes more? Well, that's the deal I'm offering. For just that $49.99 payment, 10 of them, the entire collection will be yours in the event he stops writing. The more he writes, the cheaper it's going to get. It's going to just keep going down. May the man pray to the gods. May he live forever and keep writing, because the deal just keeps getting better and better for you. Now, granted, I will not be shipping anything out until after he finishes. That way, I can guarantee all of you gets the complete collection all at once. But as soon as that does, you'll get it all. The entire thing. And that's cheap. Right now, it's fair market value. It's works out to about $11 a book. But the more he writes, the cheaper they get, my friends. And that is a deal. That is a deal I am bringing to you. Now, all you have to do is go to your nearest Clacks Tower, send one out to me, CMOT Dibbler Enterprises, Incorporated. With your banking information, I will send one of my people down to make those payments come out. Easy peasy. No muss, no fuss to you. I'm all about making it convenient. That is my job. So, get out there, get it going, because it's going to be great. As soon as he's done, once all those books are finished, we'll get them out, shipped to you direct, my friend. And that's not all. If you join now, if you act now, get in on the ground floor of this, you will get a complimentary 3-month subscription to the Sausage in a Bun a Month Club, where every month we will mail you a sausage in a bun, guaranteed to be 100% meat products of some kind. My promise to you. So please, come on out. My operator is standing by, ready to take your information. Until next time, my friends, remember, the name CMOT Dibbler stands for the best deals. Deals that I will make for you, even if I have to cut my own throat. And that's a promise. Okay. I think we've got it. Yes. Oh, all right. Sorry about that. Seemed to have some sort of interference there for a bit, but we're back. And welcome to Chapter 15 of Book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today, this week, I'm going to talk about not one book, but 2 books. Reason being, these books kind of mesh together really well, and I really consider them to be one book, even though they are separate, because the stories are so intermingled as to you really can't pull them apart, at least in my mind. These books are Terry Pratchett's The Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic, the first two books in his Discworld series, of which he has about 40 books out right now. And they are glorious. Any of you that don't know about the Discworld, don't know about Terry Pratchett, seriously, rectify that immediately. Because he is one of the best authors out there, and one of the best British authors I have ever read. I've read a few of them. But Terry Pratchett's Discworld. The Discworld is, on the whole, a parody of sorts of our world. The conceit of these books is that the Discworld is literally a disc. It is flat. The world is flat. And it is a rotating disc perched on the back of 4 giant elephants, which are in turn perched on the back of a giant turtle swimming through space. And there's magic, there's all kinds of wizards, barbarians, witches, pretty much anything you can imagine generally tends to happen in this. I mean, for example, look at this book. There's a chest with about 100 tiny little legs on it that walks around on its own, called the luggage. That's the sort of book you're getting into reading any of the Discworld books. Now, full disclosure here, I'm a huge Terry Pratchett fan. I may be a little more forgiving than some people when it comes to his work, but I still think it's worth checking out. Reason being, these books literally are the first look at the Discworld. And while some of the later books, usually I think it's around the fourth book? Yeah. He really starts coming into his own around the 4th book. He starts to really get a feel for it. The first 3, which includes these 2, of course, is kind of him testing the waters, fleshing things out some. But what he does later on really, really gets into the meat and potatoes of how all the books from that point progresses. So if you can tough it out, like even if you're just kind of interested, tough it out through those first 3 books, those first 4 books. After you've read the 4th, if you still don't like it, I'll say, okay, you gave it a shot. Good on you. Go on to greener pastures, my friend. But these books are amazing. Now, the first 2 books deals with 2 main characters. The first being Rincewind. Rincewind is a wizard, sort of. He only has ever learned 1 magic spell. And these are spoilers, by the way. I'm not going to put up the spoiler warning and do that obnoxious loud voice because that was a little loud last time. I do apologize for that. But there is some spoilers coming. He's a wizard, and he's only ever learned 1 spell because early on, when he was young, when he was still a student, he, on a bet, snuck down into the libraries, or the dungeon, the deep, dark, dank dungeon of the Wizards College, Wizards University. And he read from the Octavo. The Octavo being the book that the magic book that the creator left behind with 8 magic spells. 8 is a big number on the Discworld. They tend not to really say the number, more of imply the number in a lot of things, because there's 8 colors, there's 8 sides to this super creature that could devour the world, kind of a Cthulhu-like thing. There's 8 here, 8 there. I mean, wizards are usually the 8th son of an 8th son, instead of the 7th son of a 7th son, as is usually from a famous movie. A lot of things in his books you'll find tend to call to the real world. He tends to take things like in these books, as a matter of fact. That was a segue. The second person that shows up, the second main character, is a man by the name of Two Flower. And he's described in the book as having 4 eyes and having a little iconograph, a little box that has a demon in it that paints pictures. Then he's taking pictures of everything around him. He's basically a tourist. Picture the stereotypical Japanese tourist, for example. I mean, even his name in the book, Two Flower, he's from a culture that is very Japanese in description. It's definitely taking that and running with it in a fantasy setting. But he doesn't really have 4 eyes, although he might. I'm not sure if that's how Mr. Pratchett envisioned it or not. I have seen the movie that has, what's his name? Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings. He's playing Two Flower in it, and he doesn't have 4 eyes, but he does have a pair of glasses. Because, again, it's typical, stereotypical Japanese tourist is kind of what they're going for. He comes from this other country on vacation to the grand city of Ankh-Morpork, which is actually 2 cities bisected by a river, one being Ankh, one being Morpork. They merge together, etc., etc. And because this other continent is so powerful, so wealthy, with so much oomph to it, the tyrant of Ankh-Morpork enlists the wizard Rincewind and basically tells him that his life will be forfeit if he doesn't make sure that this Two Flower, who seems to have gotten very chummy with him, then if he doesn't protect him at all costs and make sure he not only survives his trip to Ankh-Morpork and the surrounding countryside, but also goes back home with glowing reports and all this good stuff. So Rincewind is tasked with keeping this guy alive, even though the man walks into trouble like you wouldn't believe. And it goes from there. The luggage that I showed you, that's Two Flower's luggage. It's enchanted. The entire thing is made of sapient pear wood. And the way Rincewind describes it, after actually seeing the thing, is that this wood is so rare, so magically imbued, that a powerful arch-wizard, after centuries of study, might come to own a small staff, maybe a wand, made of this. And Two Flower has an entire luggage. A big chest. It eats things. I know, it sounds bizarre, but that's what the books are like. Now, he goes around, they go on an adventure during this book. There's a lot of fun happening in this book. And at the end of this book, something happens, and it's kind of like Terry Pratchett was going to write the one book and stop, because it had an almost definitive ending. And then in The Life Fantastic, he has the most convoluted way of undoing that ending and then sending them all on another quest again, only to run into a couple other people. One of which, a recurring character that pops up a couple of times, is Cohen the Barbarian. He only shows up in this book. You can kind of see him right there. Cohen the Barbarian is basically Conan the Barbarian. The only difference is Cohen was in his prime, big muscly man, going around killing evil gods, evil priests, saving maidens, doing all that heroic stuff that barbarian warriors do. He did all that, and this was in the book. It's easier to describe this way. In the book, Rincewind is talking to Cohen, and he can't believe that this is actually Cohen the Barbarian, right? Because he's this old man. He's like a grandpa. He's got no teeth. But he's still a barbarian warrior. He's very old, but he's wiry. It's like nothing but tendons and bones wrapped together on this man. And Rincewind can't believe it. It's Cohan, because he's like, no. My grandfather told me stories about Cohan the Barbarian, and he was all, tall, muscular, blonde, and everything. And then it clicks in Rincewind's mind. His grandfather told him tales. Rincewind's already in his 60s, I think, because he's got a long, flowing white beard. And that kind of clicks to him. It's like, yeah, okay. So the barbarian warrior gets old, but he's still doing everything barbarian warriors do. That's the joke. And Pratchett really plays it off well. And when they come back later on, it gets played off even better and better and better. All he does is improve his skill. All of his books, especially these particular ones, the Discworld, the way they parody real life situations. There's an entire book parodying the Phantom of the Opera later on. There's a book parodying Dirty Harry and cop movies with the guards. The first book being Guards. The way his books tend to work, they go in sections like that. But these ones, it's amazing how everything all ties together. And this book, the second one, ends up dealing with the spell that's locked inside his mind. The octavo and everything, that plays a big part in the sequel. It's only ever introduced in here, and it plays out in the sequel, and then you kind of never hear about it again. So it's really interesting. I think if you haven't read it, you really should, because Terry Pratchett is an amazing author. The man has a rapier wit. It is very, very dry. If you like Douglas Adams books, if you like, I can't think of anything right now. I'm drawing a blank. But if you like British humor, if you watch any Doctor Who with the dry comedy, the dry wit, Are You Being Served is another one that had really good dry wit on TV. If you like that style of humor, the very subtle, the very dry, Pratchett's Discworld books will delight you, because it has a lot of that. There's a lot of puns and plays on words. There's a lot of things happening that would be completely illogical and impossible in any fantasy setting except this one. And he not only makes fun of everything that's in here, but he kind of also does it in a loving way, where he's not doing it to hurt. That definitely comes across in Pratchett's writing. He's not making fun of these things to hurt the feelings of anyone or any group or any particular author or anything like that. He's doing it as a sort of a love letter to all the things that he enjoys. So yes, I would definitely read these, the Discworld books normally. I would also check out his children's books that also take place in the Discworld. They are an absolute delight. Not really what one would call normal for children's books, since he tends to they tend to be a little darker than most children's books, but I've covered darker children's books on this show before. And I'll definitely be talking about the Tiffany Aching books later on. Not in this video, but later on when I get around to them. So yes, the Discworld. I mean, what other book could you have Death as a character? Although Death as a character in the first two books, especially the first one, is a little different than how he shows up, because he's the main character in the fourth book that I had mentioned, Giving a Chance. And by the time the fourth book comes around, Death is a little different. But Death, in the Acorn Media animated features that have, of two of the Discworld stories, Weird Sisters and Soul Music, two of them out there. I have them. I've watched them. They're hilarious. Death, as portrayed, as voiced in those two, are voiced by none other than Christopher Lee himself. Yes, Saruman himself. That deep, booming voice is how Pratchett basically envisioned death talking, this deep booming voice. And he's got his own little island. He's a central character. He has hopes, he has dreams. He has a daughter and a granddaughter who shows up later. So it's really interesting and really weird. And I would definitely check it out if I were you. So, I could go on and on. I could spoil both of these books completely and utterly, more than I already have. I don't want to do that because you really need to read them yourself. So for now, I will just leave you with The Color of Magic. Should I do the... Yeah. I'll just do the prologue, the very first glimpse of the Discworld. And I'll leave you with this, my friends. In a distant, second-hand set of dimensions, in an astral plane that was never meant to fly, the curling star mists waver and part. See. Great Atuin the turtle comes, swimming slowly through the interstellar gulf, hydrogen frost on his ponderous limbs, his huge and ancient shell pocked with meteor craters. Through sea-sized eyes that are crusted with rheum and asteroid dust, he stares fixedly at the destination. In a brain bigger than a city, with geological slowness, he thinks only of the weight. Most of the weight is, of course, accounted for by Beryllia, Tubul, Great Typhon, and Jerakeen, the 4 giant elephants, upon whose broad and star-tanned shoulders the disk of the world rests, garlanded by the long waterfall at its vast circumference, and domed by the baby blue vault of heaven. Astropsychology has been, as yet, unable to establish what they think about. The Great Turtle was a mere hypothesis, until the day the small and secretive kingdom of Kroll, whose rimmost mountains project out over the rimfall, built a gantry and pulley arrangement at the tip of the most precipitous crag, and lowered several observers over the edge in a quartz-windowed brass vessel to peer through the mist veils. The early astrozoologists, hauled back from their long dangle by enormous teams of slaves, were able to bring back much information about the shape and nature of Atuin and the elephants. But this did not resolve fundamental questions about the nature and purpose of the universe. For example, what was Atuin's actual sex? This vital question, said the astrozoologist with mounting authority, would not be answered until a larger and more powerful gantry was constructed for a deep space vessel. In the meantime, they could only speculate about the revealed cosmos. There was, for example, the theory that Atuin had come from nowhere and would continue at a uniform crawl, or steady gait, into nowhere for all time. This theory was popular among academics. An alternative, favored by those of a religious persuasion, was that Atuin was crawling from the birthplace to the time of mating, as were all the stars in the sky, which were, obviously, also carried by giant turtles. When they arrived, they would briefly and passionately mate, for the first and only time, and from that fiery union new turtles would be born to carry a new pattern of worlds. This was known as the Big Bang hypothesis. Thus it was that a young Cosmochelonian of the Steady Gate faction, testing a new telescope with which he hoped to make measurements of the precise albedo of Great Atuin's right eye, was on this eventful evening the first outsider to see the smoke rise upward from the burning of the oldest city in the world. Later that night he became so engrossed in his studies that he completely forgot about it. Nevertheless, he was the first. There were others. And then it goes on. So, my friends, Terry Pratchett, The Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic. I heartily recommend it this week. And until next week, remember, like and subscribe, and you should be reading.